the U.S., people have been protesting against police brutality. The sheer numbers of protesters has been astounding. Americans have been acting like it's 1968, organizing and actually being active about demanding civil rights. So now might be a good time to remember that the government has a long history of shutting down protests in some really crazy ways. In 1968, the Democratic National Convention was being held in Chicago, and people came out to protest the Vietnam War in droves. The mayor called in 27,000 police, state, and federal agents. They beat the crap out of protesters and journalists. They used tear gas and batons. More than 1,000 people were treated for injuries. But that was nothing compared to how the government shut down the war protest at Kent State. In May of 1968, the National Guard arrived on campus, and the governor of Ohio vowed that the government was going to eradicate the problem, meaning eradicate the protest. After using tear gas to break up the crowds, National Guardsmen opened fire on protesters, killing 4 and injuring 9. Then 30 years later, in 1999, protesters gathered in what's become known as the Battle in Seattle. Citizens gathered to protest the World Trade Organization Ministerial Conference and its globalization movement. Police used tear gas, rubber bullets, and pepper spray. And they forcibly arrested hundreds and then held them for days in order to squelch the protests. And then, of course, there's the Occupy movement. Across the nation, protests were systematically shut down by the government. Protesters were pepper sprayed. The corporate media belittled the entire movement. Tons of arrests were made. The FBI even knew of and did nothing about plans to murder Occupy leaders by sniper rifle. The government did everything they could to shut down Occupy protests in seriously screwed up ways. And now again, people just protested across the country. And this time, it's been peaceful and organized with a clear, rational demand of ending the brutality of our militarized police. The government must have been brainstorming ways to stop it. The police had their normal pepper sprays and military-grade LRADs and whatnot, but people still protested. At the height of the protesting, the Senate released their torture report that had no other business coming out when it did, so maybe that was their way of trying to distract everyone from protesting. Who knows what they were thinking? All I know for sure is that with such a long history of squelching protests, watching pretty much the entire country come together like it just did must have been torture for the government to watch. Tonight, let's talk about that.